Okay. Opening prayers first. Dewa dan den donga dan tai nyodala na me pa yang da pa zobe chanjo rambo je toba
All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood.
Oi ti che do sa ma je je pa do le ma ye sang ge wa la go ma ye pa do le ma ye sang ge wa la go tu te ren zong de nya ma san da zam je pa do le ma ye sang ge wa la go.
Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind.
Oi sanje chudan sojen chonan lo sancho pada dana jasun je dage jin so jibe sonam je lolo penso sanje do ba yo.
In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings.
Oi sa ye buju so ye me do dang jero le ye nye de jembon de sanje chen la mi de pwa ye rogo nam da yen de je wo yo.
The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the four continents, and the sun and the moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields.
Om garan de wanda gana rana mandala padita so wa simje nam je sambata lo ye seda jeta wa jujon de mon te ba ye jujon kolo go.
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the two vehicles and their combination according to the dispositions and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings.
Gumbo tu je che tin ba tam chen chen ba dun ba bo so na yo den jan zu ye te chen chen la san sa lo ta ba do cha ta we jo ge we ni song le do chen chi to tong dan che jo wa chi jo chu la chan sa lo zhu ne zhu wei lang yang den la ba da la ra de ge xian ga dang ba yun den xian gen de la yang chan sa lo do jian jian de de la na ru da ma ba ma la chi ji gang bo ba pa mu zhu ba jo an zhong ba ga ji la ma na la ge san sa. 若明知见见婆罗那对说三界观见我念若生去空空中中的佛走了摩那那个三叉八天走了马伦波切大个就对面的有那个人也不过那地上的各种都见过这早就说自身东罗就了解见见要是没碰要解了说神经顿顿要在三界那怎么能见能得早就 다시 delay.
Delay.
Tere nga zo ta pado nga pa. Chuni ka pado ko tana labyo wa. Tendu ta katsang konda che ka pado ko lapu kapsu. Ta Shiva Tachune, Teni Mahika Paro, Ganetang Tisha Yobari. That Terran Juniga Pado Capsu, Ta Sheni Zonde, Teni Tijila, Kanda Yonga Yopa, Teni la Pimpa Tak Kanda Yoba, Tigola, Yatila, Juniga Pado, trees, the Chadi or water.
So today we come to the fifth bardo, the bardo of Dharmata. And so the last bardo we discussed was the bardo of dying. And we have said that this begins with the time when it is certain that one is dying and until it lasts until one dies. And so now we come to the bardo of Dharmata, which describes then after one then has died, what happens next, what comes after one has died, and what things, what methods are beneficial at that time. So these are the instructions on the bardo of Dharmata.
Da Namju Nyamle Yabu Yonkenji Yenana, Da Hiesujutela Tata, Nyamlenji, Jerem Je Pazoram Gangala, Durum Sepana, Yin Rawamato, Yin Mexas in Kanya, Tendeshe Nan Tsao, Yonga Yosamari, Nyamlenji Padurum Sepana Yimato. Then it Mayan Bagata, Jetang Motamjelana, Da Shivatu Jitepe, Katsaja Kone Labari, Kangata, Noman Jita, Chimbo Chip, and the chip. Ta Matina Loni Chip, Ta Kalakashu and out. Chagayorova.
So no, when one is an excellent practitioner, then this concept of dying, death, is something like first when you practice, there's the generation stage, and then it dissolves into the completion stage. So it is no more than that to a practitioner. Just like in a dissolution stage, life dissolves like that. And aside from just being part of the practice, just being the completion stage, no other special feeling of fearfulness and so on arises. So it is just a stage of one's practice. However, for ordinary, normal people, this concept of dying, as we also mentioned last week, is really creating us a lot of fear and suffering and pain. And in fact, it's really the most difficult thing that we experience in our life.
Then Cheers, Jute, Tata Yunga Yele, Drop de Baka, Tatanga Zupo, Depan Yunga Yela Tem. Then Nanga de Namshi de Yang Tatanga Zuki, number Topa Mang, Boyo de Vade, Remba Yendo, Rapaga number Hipa, number Topa Tamji, Remba Yendo Pachawa Tem. Chawa de Yang Pa Gunjukatan Lamon. That dangerous and Pa Drum Sepana. Then the J Chaka Yorova. Then it ten Yamle Sepo, Yamle, you meet in a day that were by the moose into you. Then at Yamle Mepala, that day that will Chaka Yonaya, the country Chaka Yo, moose into you, Marva. Then Yamle Apo Yongo, Jumsin and got the Della to Yorova.
So on the outer level, our body is composed of the 4 elements. And when we die, then those 4 elements dissolve one into the other. And then on the inner level, the consciousness dissolves. So there are many thoughts in our mind, and they gradually dissolve. First, the more coarse thoughts dissolve into the subtle thoughts, and then those subtle thoughts also return back to the alaya consciousness, the all-ground consciousness. So a person who has practiced, sees this just like the dissolution stage, and they can recognize the stages of dissolution. We as ordinary people, if we have not practiced, then even though it actually happens, we don't recognize it. And this is actually really the actual reason why it is so important that we engage in practice.
Tata nga su rakpa, zubukin jungwa yesen, jungwa nga te pa, tata jungwa nga la pa temruwa te la, re yenda ta ko sita ta nanda sen, song ye yorwa, tata sai kam, tambo zubukin sai kam te, ta chola tem, tende sen riba yin chikla chik tena pa, tama, nauka kam sen, te pa ta pa temka yorwa. Tela sai kam chola tempe tala, ta nepa ta pe chap chenpo, teni ramba yenda ta zupo pe jego chawo ta, teni yang ngo yang kya mo to pa pe jego chawo teni se kya ro yo ro, ta te sai kam chola tempe ta stal te yin song yo ro, sai kam chola tempe stal te, ta nanda la te ka so nang de hipa te la kan yo go yo sa re se na to na yi je, to ma ga chap so na yi. Sai kam chola temple tala tende yongre so yo sana ni ga tala.
So when we die, first the core 4 or 5 elements that make up our body dissolve, and it is explained that for each step of the dissolution, there is an outer and an inner sign. So, for example, first the earth element of our body dissolves into the water element, and then so forth, and finally, everything dissolves into the space element. So first, when the earth element dissolves into the water element, so if a person is very sick, then gradually, slowly, they begin to feel that their body is very heavy and they are no longer able to lift their heads up. And that is said to be an outer sign of earth dissolving into water. And then an inner sign of earth dissolving into water is then one's perception, one perceives like a visual perception of like a smoke pervading, like pervasive, a smoky a vision. So these are the outer and inner signs of earth dissolving into water.
Te choy kam te mela pa tendo tala kar yo resena sadala ta ka kambo chaya ta ka da na kambo chaya ta chimma me pa chaya tende yong ya ta teni na ta su me ju ta so ya re me ju se na ta yama chawo kana ni sa gang na jing du ga te la me ju se ga yo re ba che jang te na chona yin je je ta che ngo jo no jang no ni chona yin ji me ju se na ta ta hi ba gang na te ta ba che cham cham na ten ro ji yong de re so yo.
And then when water dissolves into fire, the outer sign of that is that one's mouth and one's nose and so on dry up. So one's saliva and so on dries up. And the inner sign of water dissolving into fire is like a vision of a mirage. A mirage is, for example, when you're out in the hot sun, then from far away you see the horizon kind of moving like as though there would be water, but there isn't really. It's a mirage. So sometimes the awareness, one's mind has this vision, a mirage-like vision when water dissolves into fire.
Ta me kam de long la tempe ta la Zubolo to me by China, Gamba Damo Chaya, Teletreme, Toramba, in the tiny dodo Yorova. Sitala and the younger is that in the young may come Cholo Timro with that. Nandala Tini Simba Major Towers, Simba Majors Hakorva, Gonda to Sola Memma, Lam Samson the Saint Donica. Simple Majors in the Dina in Samson saw the legend on there is.
Then when fire dissolves into wind, the outer sign is that one loses one's body heat and one's legs become cold, and then slowly the entire body becomes cold. So one's body heat leaves the body. And the inner sign is sometimes one's consciousness has a vision that is similar to fireflies. You know, these flies that these like bugs that we see at nighttime when it's dark and they're kind of luminous. So one has this flies kind of vision as an inner sign.
They longer come. Nabhila Tem, Sigure, that tea Tala Karayoris, and that walked on to Yomara, walked on Yala Pekala Kapoyom. Then he walked the rain, then he walked that she woke up so that walked. Take short down to Tawalat in a pango moto, then he walked the chain of Yorova. Or that day walk longer come number hipala Tem, Sajute, say that there, the rest in the Tem. Nandala, that mammy long job out. Tendecheka nawa shari is on the Sondua.
And so then the wind dissolves into the consciousness, and an outer sign of that is that first breathing becomes more difficult, and then when one actually dies, then one is unable, so after one has exhaled, one is unable to inhale again, so one's breathing stops. So that's the outer sign. And the inner sign of wind dissolving into consciousness is that this vision of like a butter lamp, like a fire flame in the wind.
That day Rapa get him sorry, Yuma Yaga Temso. They attempt of Jesus, then in Chawa. That Bechanan, Nanchi near top, Nawan, Chipa near tops in the mountain. Don't the Karisena, that Namhi Nawala Thames. That Kantana te Rakwa in the Patawala temple. Namto Rakwa, Numon Rakwa. Namhi Nawal Tem Sepakapsu. That Nawal Kanda Chakayorisena. Kalam Malam Nalam Senazo Namju Cheki in the Juva. Team Mepanamkala Dava Shavata, now Kalam Johnson Yuva. Then T Capsu, the Kara Yongo Yorisena. Tatanga so Hedang le Jopak. Hedang le Jopak, Doctor Sama, Gano Yore. Then Dochashi to Muxum. Numon Batam Zawate on River. Now he now all the temple capsule, dream Mepanam Kala Dava Shavata, Kalam Cherry, Kalam Chavatan Yamtu, Tene Tatati Shedan le Jopak. Topatamangano Yores.
So this is the coarse dissolution, the dissolution of the four elements. And after the coarse dissolution, then it begins the subtle dissolution. And that is threefold. So then, so we speak about, it's called appearance, increasing and close attainment. So first, consciousness dissolves into appearance, the first one. And so here, we are coming from the coarse dissolution into the subtle dissolution. So during the subtle dissolution, the coarse forms of thoughts and afflictive emotions dissolves. So when consciousness dissolves into appearance, what kind of appearance does one perceive? So we often speak about these visions of whiteness, redness, and blackness. So at the time of appearance, first there is an experience of whiteness, which is similar to the moonlight in a cloud-free night sky. And at that time, all the concepts of hatred or anger become stop. So the three afflictive emotions of attachment, hatred, and ignorance, these are the roots of all the other afflictions. So at the time when, together with the appearance of moon-like whiteness in a cloud-free sky, this whiteness, together with this whiteness, all concepts of anger or hatred come to an end.
Tene te jini da nangwa te hipala te yore. Ta te kapsu ta kanda yore. Sena malam chara sujete. Te me pa nang kala nyo shawa ta ba. Kyoka ngawo nyo shawa kapsu malam la yore. Malam chara ta nyamto docha le chopak. Docha ki dang tamok so la. Docha le chopak to so yong so zo pa de. Tene ngando yore te kapsu.
And then next, appearance dissolves into increase. And so a sign of that is a vision of redness, which is similar to the morning sunlight in the early morning in a cloud-free sky. And then together with this redness of these three afflictive emotions, all concepts related to attachment come to an end.
Tene te jini chipa nye topla tem saka yore. Ta te kapsu tsowa kanda yongo yore sena na tom tom. Tata ngarang zon changme mana. Tsena je namka tsama tinga drip tsatu tene dawa tang karma nawa kaya mepa kapsu na tome rewa. Tena ye nalam char. Nalam chawa ta nyamda tamula chawa ka tene ko tsama ngando yore. Te tang nyamda tene nalam shane tene pa trimba meba yasene jando yoro. Tama pa tamche na ta trimba meba chane jando tende chigri. Tene nyamle kin nyamle yabo yong kin gom nyamle namjo be yabo yong kin to so na ta kunje ke tene lepsong wa. Namjo ngarang ke nyamle sen to ti tene lepsong wa. Te tang che meba chane. Kipa tinga na lepsong wa.
And then next, increase dissolves into close attainment. And the experience at that time is one of complete blackness, darkness. For example, is in the middle of the night when the sky is covered with clouds that we cannot see. And so we can't see any stars, we can't see the moon, it's completely pitch black. So this kind of blackness, and along with this blackness, all concepts related to ignorance stop. And then together with this experience of blackness, for ordinary people then fall into an unconscious state, like passing out. However, a person, a great yogin who has meditated and practiced well in their lives, they recognize how they come to this alaya, this all-ground consciousness. And it's the same state that we get to in our normal practice that we have done in our lifetimes.
Nyamle yabo yongkin yana kachang nga so konda xie de je chugum phowa xie rwa ta chugum phowa se na tere kun ye ga gang la tene tata rikpa mawen re se wa nang chan tene ta san jeng ro yo re tende ga nyamle jin de la ta chuni pardo se na yong ga yo ma re chuni pardo ta sipa pardo se na tene de yo ma dan cham je cha re chugul long tem cha re pena tata nga so sherji pompa je yo na pompa na lo kanam ka rewa tongba rewa pompa na lo tongba tang tene pompa te cha so na ja ya na pompa na lo kanam ka te ta sei nam ka te ni yewa me pa se ne re cha re nam ka jikwa cha cha rewa de na ye se chuko long lo tem cha re ta te pe nyam ne ne chen thombo jin to so la ta den de yong lo yo res.
And so, as you also mentioned the last week, is that when someone has been an excellent practitioner, then actually at this state, this is the Dharmakaya poa. One comes to this all-ground consciousness, the alaya consciousness, which is like the meeting of a mother and her child, and then one attains enlightenment. So for such a being, there is no bardo of dharmata, and there is also no bardo of becoming. Everything has stopped, and they have already attained enlightenment. They have dissolved into the space expanse of the Dharmakaya. For example, a crystal vase that is empty inside, when the empty vase breaks, then the outer empty space and the inner emptiness of that vase have become one, merged completely. There's no more delineation. And so at this point, one has dissolved completely into the space expanse of the Dharmakaya. And so this is what happens when one has reached really high advanced levels of practice.
Tene nyamle se mishinki ta tamarwa. Tende na ta ta temrem to zo to jamba yin de ro yo de ngu sin to ko yo mare. Ti zo ngu sin to ma to pa ma che ta ti nan ti ni to song ke te pa temrem de ba yin de ko yi ten la lo na ye yo sa shang ba kap su ta ha ko marwa. Ko tom dana te jamba me ba cha so la. Ko jamba me ba cha yo tom tama ba na tende che tena na tom su ro yo ba. Tema to yin me sa ko na ka ya yo yo mare. Ti sa na ta nam jo nga sa nyam le ya bo se go ya ta sem te sa ra ke che ngarang kar se ko ro che nyu mo ba ko na che ji sun da no wang de yor ma so wa te sa ra ngarang la te nyamle lo komde yo pa se gu jum chi mambo ya tana ya to yo ba.
So for a person who hasn't really done any practice, who doesn't know about practice, an ordinary person, they go through the same stages of dissolution, but they do not recognize them. And so moreover, after the dissolution of the appearance, increase, and close attainment, then one returns back to the all-ground consciousness. And at this time, when one reaches this consciousness, the ground luminosity arises, becomes clear. But ordinary people do not recognize it, and they have no special feeling at all. They are basically in an unconscious, past, out state of no recognition of awareness at all. So this is really why normally it's important that we engage in practice in an ongoing basis, and that we train the mind not to only follow our afflictive emotions, not to become controlled by them. So this is the very reason why we have to really form this habituation to the practice.
Tene je tang tamarwa chola ta tene timba me pa cha so na thom jar so na ta ti nga la o ta ka he ka se na pe cha ka he na na sha ma sum sa la tende se ne jar de ga ri se ri yang ta te tin tin yo sa ma re ka he la ne te chu chu zai zang sin sa yun zang la yo re Kalaji Savi Yonzalamato, Jargamaris, to say Luris, Jetan, Tayondan Rosena, Shihola Hyakzum Chilen Rosenata Yamasumla, Kote Sola Mepanala, Pacha Ludevan, Tendajan, Winzing.
So an ordinary person, therefore, has become completely unconscious in a state of complete blackness, like passed out. So in some scriptures, it says that one stays in this unconscious state for about 3 days. But it's not that certain, actually. Others also say that one only really stays in that state for maybe less than an hour, the time it takes to eat a meal. And then one awakens again from that unconscious state. But so what is generally most, like the generally most pervasive view is that that person who has passed away will remain within such an unconscious state for about 3 days.
네, 다나 탐 자존 될처 세용거리와 될처 세용도 되니 다 나랑 다 담을 바에는 다 난진단 자요 말이와 된도 가르쳐서 날 가르쳐 장화를 삼는 건데 저 나는 되니 세용 요러죠. 되니 된데 다 다요 저도 예요 버차대요. 된도 되니 다 가시에 제라는 된데서나 양 두주대살라 现有吧样哈么个见呢，这他出送完之后就抢的得事，等着俺了那得有的，去年把多样马下，哦，大这南极 top 送个大jaar送啊的了，出些第八路的呢，这开些这个呢，建抢嘛就完之后这，开些这个呢，但能常常都做个搞的事情都通过有了带来的，他写的有办法上，等那样带来样也没去，等着样东啊等着个生产着做个嘛的吧，等着个俺那样就用刚上去那这个有啥？
And so everything becomes completely black, and then one awakens from that state. So ordinary people have not separated from self-grasping. So they awaken within this state of self-grasping, and so they think that what has happened to me, where am I, and so on. Because there is a self, there's also other. And so then there are some who, for some time, don't really recognize that they have actually died. And they, for some time, stay in a state of confusion. And for some time to them now, this bardo of Dharmata does not appear. So this happens right after they awaken from the dissolution of when appearance has dissolved into attainment, into increasing into attainment and then unconsciousness. So they awaken from that. And so then they are in a state for some time of confusion and unclarity. And then gradually they begin to see their family. Sorry. And then they they wonder if they have died, but they don't really trust in that. And so then they stay in this state of mental torment and worries and so on.
Ti kapse na ta ngutu namje ko nyamle sin do nyonyi na ta ngutu tata siya ta tene tata nyamle ko te sande siya ta tende to so be ka chen bo ri do ti kapse na ta xie chan na ya ri kwa jang bo sen de ga yo re tene ta xie cha wa ngutu siya ta tene ko rang namje nyamle to so ta la parte ta sanje opa me ta tende ke che dewa tin la so ba tende se ne yan den ba shu chen bo se go ya ta to chu ko te ko la san de si tende se je na pe pin to chen bo je se na ta te du yang ta ba lang na se yin ro ya Chuni Bardo, Mariko, Chuni Bardo Mancha, Mancha, Moni Tabulana, Sindra, and the young Sibarisha.
And so at this time, actually, is a very significant time. If that person has been a practitioner, then it's very important to remind them of their practice and to introduce them, to remind them to recognize. Because even though they have died, their awareness is very bright at that time. So they have died, and this is a very important time to remind them about their normal practice, in particular the Buddha Amitabha and the Pure Land of Dewachen. It's extremely beneficial at that time to really lead them to this aspiration of birth in Dewachen and so on, to really remind them of the practice. Because at that point, it is possible that they may find that path to liberation at that time. And that time is now before they actually come to the Bardo of Dharmata. Even before that, it is possible that one finds liberation.
Chayala soba. Teni tela tena pe xena tangam tra chenpo yongya. Te xena tangam tra chongwa la tena ramba yinzo teni chunye ka pardo kan chacha. Mangpo chen chaya yorwa. Te tsonggo tso yonggo yore.
And so then one stays in that state for however long of a time. And then after that begins the Bardo of Dharmata with its various manifestations, the appearances. So here we speak about the appearance of sounds and lights and rays, those three. The sounds are very loud and frightening, and the light is dazzling and difficult to bear. So due to that, due to this overwhelming experience of sounds and lights and so forth, fear and panic arises in the mind. And then with that begin the stages of the various appearances that manifest in the Bardo of Dharmata.
Chacha tu tsama dra u sa kanda je yin na yang tu tsama rang ge rikpa ke tsar rang nang rang la sharwa rikpa ke tsar nang tenda je yin ba de ta nga su ngo shi ge yo marwa nga su je ni gen zen ba de chen ne de ma do nga rang ge ni me ba ge nga rang ge sem ge tsar.
Hello? I think I lost you. Can you hear me still? What is happening?
We can hear you, Ina.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear Kapelama too?
No.
Okay.
Something happened to his
Something happened to his
yeah.
Let me send Teddy a message.
So Ina, maybe you can start it translate.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start. And so this is really why it's important that we engage in practice now, because then when we are actually in the Bardo after we have died, then all these really frightening appearances and sounds and light rays manifest. And what is important at that time is that we recognize these various manifestations as the display of our own mind, our own awareness, our own self-projections. So this is what we normally do not recognize because we are bound by dualistic grasping. So actually, all of these appearances are actually not separate from us, but they actually are like the energy or the radiance coming from our own mind. So this is as far as I got it. But I need Lama back. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
we
Lama,
can hear
Lama is
you.
muted.
Lama's gone. What happened?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Tanda nga ti partu shuin bat ti nga so nin tin la jing yo res teni nguna bana ni yo mares tani su me pares ti partu nga kyo yo I kran sa shut sa ti partu.
다 바도 그 자우 서서 저때 가서 다다 나랑 줄로 보강가 요요 바리 성요로와 암초 바 효기 전에 배 다초 신암초는 다요 대도 주니 그 란다요 그 다리스 매 효기 전에 매나니 오당 설당게 가도 남바나 초바 매는 매라는 차용 그 요래 대저 담게 다다니 오당 설때 바도 그 난자도 성안 주고 강가 요데 다 초리 성요.
So in the Bardo, these various sounds and lights and rays and so on that we perceive, actually it is said that these already exist now within our body. For example, when you squeeze your ears really strong, then you hear this kind of ooh, this sound. And that actually is said to be then the natural sound of the Dharmata. Or for example, if you press or squeeze your eyes, then you see all kinds of lights and rays and so on. So just like that. So actually these sounds and these light rays and all of that, actually all those things that appear in the Bardo are actually already present within us now, within our bodies.
전에 다 가서 오당 20g 오든 차가 요래 나랑 3g 차 요래 그래서는 담보 오장고 장고 장단 진보지고 말고 탱카 장단 진보진 된데 저거 오당 대차라 오가고 장매 받은 데서는 용거 요래 송 요래 대가랑서 다 박차 왕거 오 짜진들라 서진들라 현황도 샤 Tene wo cha chuni me pa tela che mo pa government ho tela che wan ro che so tela yo. Wena sana tan kho wa ko wo cha me pa so ma che right ro lan cham ya ke tan de pa cha cham jo ro ya ke tan de che ri do wa. Cham dang jin tela nga so xian nan ro sha. De le sen na dang bo tela te yi shi che wo pen ka dan tene nyo mong ba ko wo te ka bo cha me pa che tan de se yong ge re song do wa. Den jo nga la so te ha ko wa che. Di kaso utra me pa ne ta mang ko lan cham ya de ke lang ga yan ba ta ta wu tam dan jin de ta yi shi ge ran na yin ba ja wa ren ma ge ran yin ba ja wa ren ma ge na ne ta ta bo de nam ba nan ze ge ran yin ba shi ba sen den de se gu yo re so le.
So these light rays that appear are actually the natural radiance of one's own mind. They are primordial awareness. So the first light that appears is, there's two lights that appear together. One is a very bright, dazzling, deep blue light. And together with that appears a very dim kind of white light. And due to our habitual imprints, we naturally experience fear, and we turn away from the dazzling bright light. We don't want to go there. And we are naturally drawn to the more gentle, more comfortable, the dim light. And actually, this dim light is the light of samsara that causes us to wander in the 6 realms of samsara. And due to our habitual tendencies, that is the path we choose. So when these lights appear, we are really at a crossroads. And normally we would experience fear when in the presence of this dazzling light, this blue dazzling light, and we feel drawn to the more dim and gentle white light. So that's important to understand, that at that time you recognize this dim, comfortable light. This is my way into samsara. I must not go there. The dazzling bright light actually is the light of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, of which the first one, the blue one, is actually the awareness of the Buddha Vairochana. And then, this light, the white light, even follows this dim light. One takes birth in the God realm, in samsara. And so then next, what appears is a dazzling, brilliant white light, which is the wisdom light. And together with that appears a dim, smoky colored, kind of grayish light. The wisdom light, the bright, dazzling white light, is in essence, Vajrasattva. Sometimes it is said that it is Akshobhya, but basically they are the same. So that is the wisdom light. And the dim light in smoky color, that is one's a crossroad to taking birth in the hell realm. So if one follows the dim gray, the smoky light, one takes birth in hell. So then after that appears a bright, dazzling yellow light, and that is the wisdom light, by nature the Buddha Ratna Sambhava. And together with that also appears a dim blue light, and that again is the path to wandering anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara, which I don't remember now which one it is. Oh, it's birth in the human realm. And then after that appears a brilliant, dazzling red light that is the natural light of the Buddha Amitabha. And together with that appears a dim yellow light, and that is the light that leads to birth as a hungry spirit. And then after that, a dazzling, bright green light appears that is difficult to bear for the eyes. And all these lights are wisdom lights. These are all very bright. And the green light is the wisdom light of the Buddha Amoghasiddhi. And together with that appears a dim red light, which is the light that leads to birth as a demigod or a jealous god in the 6 realms of samsara.
Tā ndōna tindase ne wū tā chī tā shidā me pā ngārāṅga me la yāng chī tsorwa dewa wō chī ngārāṅ sō chī lega wānga tēlā chī xin chānda wō chī ānda wō chī yōnga yō sā rē. Tā tī kāpsu trīngu wā chī la tā tī tsō la xin sō na tēnī kōwa lāng chāng rō yō pā tēnī chī hā kō kō yā rī tō wā ngārāṅ sō nām chū nī kōwa ka Sinchi the solar, Tindiji, Yora, Pena, Aranzo, Taranche, Chin, Amlin, Sisati, Yona, Tetanyam, the solar, Tipo Tansando, Ni, Chala, Wayina. Mambo that Chifulon, the Senate, Matipo Tan, Ason, the Jaju, the Damdo, Rancho, Telba, Shimbando, Chen, Mopando, Chen, or Tina is in Ishiko, Wutante, New Mumbo, New Young Capsule, the New Mumbo Wutala.
So in brief, what this dim light is that the dim light is very comfortable to one's eyes and it feels very gentle. So actually, due to the power of one's karma, due to the karmic force, we naturally have a tendency to have a stronger attachment to the comfortable side. And so how should we reflect at this time? So we should understand at that time that if I become attached if I follow the comfortable way, then I will continue to wander in samsara. And that's actually something that really relates to our normal life. We can always see that in samsara. So for example, if you have, let's say, 2 options of something to do together. So one is a place where you practice the Dharma. And then the other one is a place where you can have fun and where you can relax. So just naturally, our tendency is that we pick what is more comfortable, what is easier, what is more joyful. And we do that out of habit because we are just used to picking whatever is more comfortable, more relaxed. So that is what we go toward naturally. And that's really the line between the wisdom lights and the afflicted lights. So we have a natural tendency to be drawn to the afflicted lights.
Tata te Chuni Pardo go to Patsam, Remba in the Ta, Mambo Yongo Yore, Tata Java Kola Lavura, Intelligent Mansa, Lan Chacha Mambo Yore. When as an attack, some Ranga Simke, Round Ranga Shadeva. That Tenduji read the Yora, they not to Muslim Togo Mare. Tangaton Yamlin Sijote, Tata now Kandaji Sharna, De Rana, Lango Shiata.
And so this is actually where the Bardo of Dharmata is only beginning. And after that, many more appearances, many more levels of this Bardo manifest. So first the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the Buddha families appear. And then after that, many more deities manifest. And all of these manifestations are the natural radiance, the projection of one that. And that is why we engage in practice, in order to recognize that whatever the appearance is, it all is a manifestation, an appearance coming from our own mind. And so actually when we are practicing, all we really do is applying methods to liberate all of these appearances into the natural state.
Teni higoya jigla da hitsabe jisu ngaran heyo ba ngo chor tumna teni te da tata ngaran la ngo su duje ge zupo yo mares tata tata pakcha ge lunda wo je re ma to ngune lo yo mares ngala heya ta ngala je da je karase ko paro ko no ba ta sa ngune se ne te ngune ge zupo de yo mare tā ngā kāngla yīn jē gu mārē sāmi kā yāng tānda jē kā yā shī tō na yāng pīntō chēmbō yō rē sōng yō rē.
And so one important thing that we should understand at this time when we have died is that if you're able to recognize that I have died, then at this time, the important thing to recognize is that actually right now I do not have a material body any longer. This is just a mental body of habitual imprints. It's not an actual material body. I have died. And for this reason, because I don't really have a real body, nothing can really hurt me, nothing can harm me. So there is no need to be afraid of anything. So it is said that if you're able to think in this way, it will be very beneficial at that time.
Tī kō la ngē nam jī dōng jī xie kā yuwa ngā tī Universal Studio la sōng sā kā dōng jī. Tē ngō nē sē na pē pīmbō yō rī dā. Tā ngā tē mā jī tēne sōng na tē ngāmbā jī na na sōng tē mō dā jōng jōng dā wō jī na na dē tēne sē tē tā tē mō dā tē jē jō tē yā nā ngō kā lā jō lā yōng dā wō lō jō mā lō yōng dā wō tā pē xie nā tsā wō chō tāng chā dā. Tēne sē sā bē tā mō jō tēne sē sōng pē xie nā tsā wō. Tēne ngē sāng nō jē tān tēng kāng bā tē lā, tēnē chēmbō nō mō tō tē sā, yuñ bō jōg tō sā chē mō tō lā lō jōg, tō lō jōg. Tā tē kāndē sē yō nā sā nō, tēne yāng ngā yāng jā tēng mā jīng rō yīng bā. Yāng jā tēng mā jīng rō nā tē nā nā dē nā tēne, tā yā bō tē tāng jō. Tē kō mō tān rō tē, nā nā dē chā jō tēne, dām yā tē sō kō tāng tē mā, sō pō pē ngō jō tāng nā, lōng mō rō yā tē kē sē chā tē. Tēne kō yā jā gāng dō. 야 자차도 뭐다 때지고 레모도 파스 따도 저건도 뭐다 망보 된도 된도 다네 베 스킨 된 강바 찬사 스킨 데 강데 어디 나한테 다 코 한 티니데 뭐다 때 근데 좀 털어서 야시 때서 파서다 콘고죠 되나잖아 되나 되는 자데 그도 코 강나 양도 뭐도 땡땡에 하고 저도 되는 가 지마 되나 로요 베 기본도 되라 현안 자원이는 뭐도 콘로 하면 달 하고 저러 대마도 된 담보들 빼셔서 나 바든 차차서 능원에 전에 들어간다 우리 직관도 즉 간도인 바 코랑 대문에 저라나 이바 하마오나 당문에 전에 그 바로 보다나 정무서 제가 노바 신이다 현안다 나도 요러 대다 간도 연구도 하고나 자와된 가랑 선을 통되는 우선 하고 전 드니 용요 말 현안.
So there's this story that I often tell, and that's from my own experience of visiting the Universal Studios, and that really has helped me actually in that experience. So when I went for this experience. There was this ride for the first time, and so we were in this little car, sitting in this little car, seat belt put on, and then the car took off, and it went really fast. Sometimes it went up, which was like going to the guardrails, and then it went right down really fast, and that was like going to the Naga ramps. And then there was water, and there were cliffs and rocks. It was really scary. It was also going really fast, so I was really scared. And so after that, I really thought about it. And I thought that how is that possible? This house, this building where we are in is not that big, actually. How could we go here and there and up and down like that and so fast? So then I went again to try it out again. So again, sitting in a car, everybody had their seatbelt on. And so then the car was lifted up. And not just my car, but then a lot of all the other cars around also lifted up. There were actually many cars I saw. And then it was going up and it was going down. And then I realized that actually the car actually never moved anywhere. It never did anything. It never went anywhere. It was just kind of shaking and making upward movements and downward movements like that. But really, it stayed put. It never went anywhere at all. And so then I realized what's really going on here. And I was quite happy about that. And I no longer was afraid. Now I knew what happened. So now I can go again and again without being afraid. Because now I know that nothing is really actually happening. The car isn't going anywhere. But the first time I was really scared. And so it's actually very similar in the Bardo when all of these manifestations appear. If we don't recognize them to be our own self-projections, then everything appears as real, and there's real harm and real fear and panic and so on. But then when you realize that what that actually is that appears to you, that it's actually nothing but your own mind, then you will no longer be afraid.
Tene ta pardu ke tata toke chuni pardu nyamle ngune de karari no sina tata jokchen ke thogar gonya tere. Ta ting muni tata ta chichu la pe temba top komri yabo. Ta chichu ke chi tengarang so ta kauni ti jene pardu kap tang samden pardu kap te ta kishe ya ta so chichu ra ba. Tela temba top sa ve jisu ta tata chuni pardu ke chi te thogar cha de do. Tene de 가르스는 두가 자가 요래서는 다 두가는 검조요데 다다니 nga랑 ke 르파게 디 가르자 르파 당데 태가 된다서는 운도 좋토야 그 된다가 답시지 두가냐는 저 된다지 리도와 된데 tene 텔라테네 tene 천나서 연구도 주는 매봐 참 라나 예시지로 봐 디 자당 디 가르스고라체 라히마도 매바지 차차도 되니 단준한 주제 연구 요소 말이 단들을 되네 우여데 도가르 트리샤
And so of the Six Bardos, what is the actual practice in the context of the Bardo of Dharmata? The instructions of Togol, which belongs to the Dzogchen teachings. And in order to practice Togol, which means direct crossing, one must have first achieved great stability in the Chekchu teachings of Dzogchen. And the Chekchu means direct cutting. So first one must be very stable in one's practice of Chekchu. And the instructions for Chekchu were the instructions given in the context of the Bardo of living and the Bardo of meditation. So that has to become very stable. And once that has become stable, then one is given the Dharmata, the Bardo of Dharmata instructions of Togol. And so the point of the Togol instructions is that the Togol instructions or the Togol practice is a method to recognize that all the various appearances right now are the natural expression or the radiance or the projection of one's own intrinsic awareness. So Togol is a method to recognize this in a very direct way. And when that is recognized, then there is no more basis for developing any kind of confused perceptions and fear and so forth, because one has recognized that whatever appears is one's own self-projection. It is the display of primordial wisdom. It is the expression or the nature of one's own mind and nothing else. And when one recognizes that, one will no longer believe in or have any of those confused perceptions or appearances will not confused appearances will not manifest any longer. So that is the purpose of the instructions on Togal.
Togal ka thike da tendesene le lawo sen pa ta heya je re mo dong ne nyamlen sin ken de lama theding de remba yin de teng chu chu tra sen tendesene he go ya tende cha de yore ena ta je Togal se je kan le je korang je idea ndaw kan je so kan je yan ba de ko de ngo zhong ndaw je pa se wa yin ta zok chen ka tatang la tatang ngarang so rikpa se jute rikzar se jute tatang ni ngarang so ke yihi ti za na na nying la den de sen ne de yo re se de yo re de la za ka de xie ji bu ge sen den de sen de na lo la rikpa de tik le so de den de sen yo re se de yo re de ni de ngarang so ke wang bu de mek de za de za ka de xie ji bu de mek go la so de yo re la go yo teni wangbu go mek latine teni sei nangka tang yang tang rikpa ni tende sei ne nyamlen siyong du mei ni tate nangka rikpa tike cha te so siro lo ngun som ke tsu nawa tende che yongga yo res tende ke nyamlen che rewa teni tela che lopo ke nan dok tang korang nan dok tang som tang teni mek ke ta tang som la so ba tende sen de ramba yin de den de nyam sen len dan de xie jia mang bo yong ge yo re korang so so ke ta idea ndo den de je re.
So regarding the instructions of the Togal, so it's easy to just talk about them, but then when it actually comes to practice, it actually is necessary to practice this in stages, following the instructions of a qualified guru. But just for now, just to give you an idea of what Togal is, just a brief outline. So it belongs to the Dzogchen teachings, and within the Dzogchen practices, there are various practices that we do through the gaze of our eyes, and which are related to our awareness. So it is said that also right now, at our heart level, there is a wisdom channel called the crystal channel called Gati channel, and within it there is a bindu, a sphere, the intrinsic awareness, and it is said that this Gati channel is connected to the eye sense power, so to our eyes. So the channel connects to our eyes, and so when we practice through gazing with our eyes into the open space, it is a method for the space of awareness to merge with outer space. So all of these appearances that then manifest are recognized as the appearance, the expression of this intrinsic awareness. And so for this practice, there are, for example, 3 physical postures, and there are 3 ways of gazing with one's eyes. And so then there are many very detailed levels of practice, but this is just to give you an idea, an outline of what the Togal is about.
Ta tende sen le je ta ndok tang la so ba tende nenga la ti ne ta nang ka ga la ti mek go te nang ka la pa ta ne ni ti na ne ta rekpo tsar tene dang bo ren ba yin de tene de ten bo da tene sa wo da ren ba yin de tene te le da tene ten ra wo ka ta te la so ba ren ba yin de tene la sen tene jawa ren ro tene la tang mang bo ren ba yin de tene ko rekpo tsar te da ko ren ba yin de tene sen 찬로 거 요사르와 된도 송도와 아니 차가 요리때 당하랑 저거제 담아와 그래 남도 제 때라지 인진라서 주네 용거요 말이 가르치는 가서때 최초라 띵반다고 톱 고거를 송제때 토가 근처자도서 때서 레라운드 인사리때 되니 때라양 제만 봐 인고와 라틴에 되니 당부 토가 공고 말고 당부 최초 공고 되니 토가 되니 럼바 인도 다제 라당 신강 라서 논나 다다니 나랑 주대사 그 타마바 그 사장의 신강 정도 타만타마들라 다들 럼바 인도 왔으니 야 송거 여러 조긴라 당보들 주님 원성 그 나와세 당보 고총 그 뭐들라 주님 원성 그 나와 되니 냠낭 공퍼 그 나와세 되니 대진이 르과 제퍼 그 나와세 되니 지마들라 주제 로제 그더니 주제 로제는 다 산제가 살렙 자와리 되니 그 값을 되니 가시에티 야루 축구 도스는 조과 매바 자르고도 도스는 다 산제가 살아 고송 걸론데 산제 자와 근데 다 좋진 그 다다티 토가 그냥 내 데이터 참 거를 되네 데이터 같은 것도 줘서 저는 다 받았어도 연거 연마라 컨트롤 받잖아요 녀야 매바 차서와래 된데서 돼 셀레니 사도 발바잖아 많이 송바나지 세르클은 진짜잖아 참 세마도 메서 사자들 저는 되네 저랑 다당에서 제당 그 도지라고는 라야 매바나 인가 된데서는 되네 다 다부신 간바 힘은 세 차와래 된데서는 다 럼바 된데서는 된로야 냠는텔에 된데 그런 바요레스
And so one assumes the essential points of the physical posture, and then with one's eyes, one gazes into space. And then within that state, since the eyes are connected to one's intrinsic awareness at the heart, then one's intrinsic awareness becomes expressed as the perceptions before one. So it happens gradually as one attains more stability. So gradually these visions then become more clear. So light spheres, windows appear, and then deities appear, and the 5 Buddha families appear, and so on. So in stages, various appearances manifest visually as the expression of intrinsic awareness being reflected back to one. But then if one still grasps at an ordinary dualistic reality, and one has ordinary thoughts about it, then one will not recognize that. And that is really why it is said that first one has to really gain stability in the Chekchu practice. Because the Togal, actually, it is said that it's easy for these manifestations to appear. They do appear easily, but the real crucial point of the Togal is not to grasp at them as separate from oneself. And in order to be able to do that, it is necessary to first attain stability in the Chekchu practice. And then one moves on to the Togal practice in stages. And then the various deities and the Pure Lands manifest. And actually, it is one's current ordinary environment surrounding one, that itself, that is what becomes, is manifested and is seen as a Pure Land. And it is said that in Dzogchen, it is said that there are 4 stages leading to that. And so so there's 4 visionary appearances that gradually develop. And the first one is the appearance of Dharmata, the direct appearance of Dharmata. Then secondly is the appearance of increasing experience. the third is the appearance of intrinsic awareness reaching maturity. And the fourth is the appearance of dharmata exhausted, mind exhausted. So that is when one has already reached the state of Buddhahood. And then at this point, some attain the Dharmakaya rainbow body. So they are liberated without leaving any body behind. And so then one has attained Buddhahood within the expanse of the three kayas. So in Dzogchen, this is basically how this practice of Togal is done. And then when that is actualized for such a being, no bardo then no longer appears. Even if one wanted to find confusion, one couldn't find it anymore. There is no more confusion. For example, it's just like once you are on an island of gold, you will not find any ordinary stone, any ordinary rock. Even if you want to look for it, all there is gold. There's nothing ordinary. So everything has already transformed, become pure land. And so through practice, through the Togal practice, so basically the Togal practice in stages leads to this realization.
Ta kaje ke yang sang go o nangba koran so chulo la sho na ta pa do kam ne tende je yong go yo sare ti chulo yen ba la te he ma do te yo ma ri sang go yo sare kaje ye hi chulo tende he yo ma te yo ma sang go ti he ma he ne do ma re ngaran so go sem go nang ka nyo mo pa nyo mo do ta ke dan tam to so ko ran zo so nang go yo re wa te su na na nyo mo ma sang ni zong te he cha ba ji so ti pa kha dan yo ba ya ja ja yo yo pa re Yena Nandang Langarang so Nambak Hepana Hisen La Dang Che Dai Tro Dang Chiwala Sobasen Nangayo Tingi Ba Yamari, Te Pache, Chulo Yemba Dang Chulo Meba Solo Tendesen Nangamarite, Kantana Xianang Jembo, Jekra Jembo, Be Donga Jembo, Tende Yongayo Badi, Jipari, Jiguri.
So that is this practice in brief. And so on the other hand, if one doesn't have really good practice, then in the Bardo, we will experience really incredible fear and a lot of suffering and a lot of panic and terror. And so then some people, they consider and they think that, well, if you enter Buddhism, then they talk about all of these deities and so on, these frightening appearances then that manifest in the Bardo. But that's just what the Buddhists say. Other religions don't say that. For example, Christians don't speak about that. So if we go there, then it probably won't, all of that won't happen. But actually, it's not about what they talk about. The point is really that what these appearances are, they are the natural manifestations of one's own mind, the afflictive emotions of attachment, hatred, and ignorance. And we all have them. So therefore, anyone who has died with 100% certainty will bring these habitual tendencies with them. And so it is just that maybe in the Buddhist religion, we speak about the peaceful and the wrathful deities and so on. So if one has not been a Buddhist practitioner, it's not so certain that exactly that will appear. Something else may appear to them in a different way. However, what is the same is that whatever appears will cause a lot of fear and a lot of suffering at that time. And so in that regard, we are all the same.
Karar is in the same yotsari, same yotsanata, Koran Sokita, Tadachik, Teta Okjanga, Nansol, Mund, Majona Yante, Ninzin Tana, Teta, Numont and Yopachik Pari, then Mundajon, Church Mundajoneta, Donghatan Jitatan, Kangate Yopate, Sokcha Chechon, do your mare. Then there's an internal the Shandro Yori. Sokcha Chonjon, and the Mambo Kavat, someone the mare. Mazo Tatan Trucha Chonjon, chip, bit Chonjon, Jane and the Tendaka up part and Yin and Mambo Kanduso, Shaya Yopa look to window. Pacha Tina is in the South Yoruba.
And so then one also might wonder that what about all these very small animals, like for example an ant? Is there a bardo for them? It's exactly the same because they have a mind, and maybe the appearances might not be exactly the same, but what is the same is their dualistic grasping, and so their dualistic perception and their afflictive emotions. And due to that, whatever appears to them, just like it is in our case, they also experience a lot of suffering and fear and torment in their minds. So that experience has nothing to do with the size of one's body at all. But we all have a mind, and therefore these confused appearances will appear. So we might think that this tiny little animal, this little insect, how can that happen? But it's actually the same. It's just a confused perception of creating on a small scale the habitual tendencies that continuously we do those things. And then that is what really becomes projected.
Okay, that didn't some Yana.
So we stop here for today, but do you have a question? We have time for one question.
No question. Okay. Oh yeah, that's why you summary then at the name of Momondo, which is you.
So since there are no questions, and we're going to do a brief dedication.
Sipen solen roa yamba pawe jatan jimba dan kondo sambo te yan te yen te da kunje ji so da lo jen ke wan te da tan je ra do ngo san je kusun ni pe san la dan chu ni men jo den pe san la ge de me sen den pe san la je da ngo yen mo long ro pa yo kon jo sim je den bo dan san je da san jo so bo tam je sin je la da 昨年用数字本我当进步当去接延了，也能不到见什么没加倍到接待的延当着八九到当空间他们解决对什么说不当有被给了早晚。大当圣经他们见牛的浪那没把养到把不不上就人不接多把就接。定不把就老没交给定，定真就啥等用了就定不见到我当就还定把用人呢不找些说。 上就什么叫人不就马街把那几条经济把两把没把，光呢光灯陪我哟。Okay.